I'm 58-year-old Beulah from Seattle, and the day my daughter Amanda called me petty was the day I felt my heart crack. All because I couldn't bear to see my ex-husband's lover's ex-husband at her wedding. I like him, he is a friend and harmless, she insisted. When I couldn't agree, her words cut deep. I guess you give me no other option than to cancel your invitation. I was banned from my only daughter's wedding day. But what happened a few months later changed everything. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories of family healing. My marriage to Richard had all the makings of a fairy tale, at least in the beginning. We were young, ambitious, and deeply in love when we tied the knot. I still remember the way he looked at me on our wedding day, like I was the only woman in the world. For the first few years, that look never faded. When Amanda was born, our family felt complete. She was the perfect baby with Richard's deep blue eyes and my curly brown hair. I cherished every moment of her childhood. The way she would run to the door when Richard came home from work, her little feet pattering across our hardwood floors, the bedtime stories we read together, the Halloween costumes I sewed by hand, the Saturday morning pancake breakfasts that became our tradition. Amanda was my shadow following me around the house as I did chores, asking questions about everything. Mummy, why is the sky blue? Mummy, do fish sleep? Mummy, will you always be my best friend? That last question still haunts me. As years passed, Richard became increasingly absorbed in his financial consulting business. The late nights at the office became more frequent. The business trips stretched longer. The moments of connection grew scarcer. I told myself it was normal that his hard work was for our family, for Amanda's college fund, for our retirement dreams. I was blindsided when, after 20 years of marriage, I found a text message on Richard's phone while he was in the shower. It was from his secretary, Natalie. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. My world collapsed in an instant. The confrontation that followed was ugly. Richard didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he told me he'd been unhappy for years. I never meant for it to happen with Natalie, he said, not meeting my eyes. But she understands me in a way you never have. The divorce process was a nightmare. Richard hired an aggressive attorney who seemed determined to leave me with as little as possible despite our long marriage and the fact that I had put my own career on hold to raise Amanda. The financial settlements were complicated by Richard's clever accounting and business arrangements that somehow always worked in his favour. Just 3 months after our divorce was finalised, Richard moved in with Natalie, who was 15 years younger than me. It felt like salt in an open wound. Amanda was 21 when we divorced in her junior year of college. She was devastated at first, crying on the phone and asking how this could happen to our family. She came home on weekends more often, helping me sort through the house, sitting with me through tearful evenings. "I'm so angry at Dad," she told me during those early months. How could he do this to you, to us? But Richard was persistent in maintaining his relationship with Amanda. He called her regularly, sent her care packages at school, and made sure to never miss an important event. I never spoke ill of him to her, believing that their relationship was separate from our failed marriage. Slowly, I noticed a shift. Amanda's anger toward her father softened. She began to mention him more casually in conversation, without the edge in her voice. When she graduated college, she invited both of us to the ceremony, and I had to stand awkwardly apart from Richard and Natalie, who came as a couple. "Dad's really trying," Amanda told me afterward. "He made a mistake, but he's still my father." I nodded and smiled, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. I wanted to be the bigger person for my daughter's sake. I had no idea how much that resolve would be tested in the years to come. The day Amanda called to tell me she was engaged was one of pure joy amid years of heartache. Her voice bubbled with excitement as she described how Michael, her college sweetheart of 4 years, had proposed during their hike up Mount Rainier at sunrise. "Mum, it was perfect," she gushed. "The ring was his grandmother's and he had it resized secretly, and he remembered how I once said I wanted to be proposed to somewhere with a view that takes my breath away." I felt tears streaming down my face as I clutched the phone. "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. Michael is a wonderful man. I want you to help me plan everything," she said. "You've always had the best taste, and I need you." Those words were balm to my soul after the years of feeling increasingly sidelined in her life. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of wedding planning that brought us closer than we'd been since before the divorce. We spent a Saturday shopping for wedding dresses, moving from boutique to boutique, until Amanda stepped out of a dressing room in a vintage-inspired lace gown that made us both burst into tears. "This is it, Mum," she whispered, twirling in front of the mirror. "This is the one." I nodded, unable to speak through my emotion. In that moment, she looked so much like the little girl who used to play dress-up in my clothes, yet so beautifully grown into the woman she'd become. We discussed venues endlessly, weighing the merits of garden ceremonies versus historic buildings. We tasted cake samples until we were sick of sugar-debated floral arrangements and created detailed spreadsheets for the guest list. Richard, true to form, immediately offered to contribute substantially to the wedding costs. While I couldn't match his financial input on my teacher's salary, I poured my heart into the details and planning that money couldn't buy. "Both you and Dad will walk me down the aisle," Amanda declared over dinner one night. "I want both of you to give me away." I nodded, hiding my discomfort at the thought of standing beside Richard on what would already be an emotionally charged day. But I reminded myself that this was Amanda's day, not mine, and I would do whatever made her happy. The first real tension arose when we sat down to finalize the guest list. Amanda and I were at my kitchen table surrounded by notepads and coffee mugs when she casually mentioned that her father had requested 10 spots for his colleagues and friends. "That seems like a lot for business associates," I said carefully, "especially with our space limitations." Amanda sighed. "Dad's paying for half the wedding, Mum, and some of these people have known me since I was little." I let it go, focusing instead on the special touches I was planning as mother of the bride. I found the perfect pale blue dress that complemented the wedding colours. I wrote a heartfelt speech and practiced it until I could recite it without crying. I arranged for a special mother-daughter dance to the song I used to sing to Amanda as a baby. The first real warning sign came during a dinner with Michael's family. We were at an upscale restaurant in downtown Seattle, and Michael's parents, Jack and Patricia, were warm and welcoming. The conversation flowed easily until Patricia innocently asked about the seating arrangements for the ceremony. "Well, my mum will be in the front row on my side," Amanda explained, "and my dad and Natalie will be on the same side." I kept my smile frozen in place as Patricia nodded sympathetically. "Divorce is so difficult, but it's wonderful that you're all able to come together for Amanda's special day." Little did I know that all coming together would soon include people I never expected to see again. It was during a casual Wednesday evening call with Amanda that the bomb dropped. We were discussing the final guest count for the caterer when Amanda mentioned, almost as an afterthought, "So Dad and Natalie's RSVPs came in today." I made a non-committal sound, having already accepted that my ex-husband and his new partner would be at the wedding. "And Thomas confirmed he's coming too," she added. "Thomas?" I asked, not recognizing the name immediately. "Thomas Carter, Natalie's ex-husband," Amanda clarified, her tone breezy, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "Natalie's ex-husband is coming to your wedding." My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "Yeah, he and Dad have actually become good friends over the past year. They play golf together most weekends." I struggled to process this information. The man who had been married to the woman my husband left me for was now buddies with my ex and would be attending my daughter's wedding. "Amanda, I don't understand. Why would Thomas need to be at your wedding?" He's been really nice to me when I've met him at Dad's place, she explained. He always asks about my work and remembers details about what I've told him. He even helped me pick out Dad's birthday present last year. He's become like an uncle to me. The casual way she described this relationship felt like a knife twisting in my chest. While I had been rebuilding my life alone, it seemed Richard, Natalie, and now Thomas had formed some kind of bizarre alternative family unit that included my daughter. "Sweetheart, this makes me very uncomfortable," I said carefully. "I understand that your father and Natalie will be there, but adding her ex-husband to the mix feels like too much to ask me to accept." Amanda's tone immediately shifted from casual to defensive. "Mum, it's not a big deal. Thomas is harmless. He's just a friend now. To you, maybe it's not a big deal, but try to understand how this feels from my perspective. The wedding will already be emotionally complicated with your father and Natalie there. Why can't you just be happy for me instead of making this about you?" Amanda's voice rose slightly. "This is exactly why Dad says you're difficult to deal with." That comment stung more than she could know. "This isn't about being difficult. It's about basic consideration for my feelings. You're being petty, Mum. Seriously, it's been 5 years since the divorce. Get over it already." "Petty," I repeated the word, feeling like a slap. "Is that what you think this is? What else would you call it? Thomas has never done anything to you. You've never even met him. That's exactly the point, Amanda. I don't know this man who's apparently been integrated into your life through the woman my husband left me for. Can you see how that might be painful for me?" The argument escalated, with Amanda insisting I was overreacting and me trying desperately to make her understand my perspective. By the end of the call, we were both raising our voices. "Look," Amanda finally said, "I don't want to fight about this. Thomas is coming to the wedding because he's important to Dad and he's been kind to me. That's all there is to it." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "Amanda, I'm asking you to reconsider this. Not for your father's comfort, not for Thomas's, but for mine. I'm sorry, Mum, but I've made my decision. I hope you can respect it." The call ended shortly after, with neither of us truly hearing the other. I sat in my living room for hours afterward, staring at the framed photo of Amanda's college graduation, wondering how we had arrived at this point where her father's feelings seemed to matter more than mine. 2 days after our heated phone call, I received a text from Amanda that made my blood run cold. "We need to talk about the wedding." When I called her back, her voice was unnervingly calm. "I've thought about our conversation. Mum and I need to know if you're going to be able to attend the wedding without making a scene about Thomas being there." "Making a scene," I echoed, stunned by the characterization. "Amanda, I've never made a scene in my life. I simply expressed that I'm uncomfortable." "Well, Dad is worried that you'll be cold to Thomas or say something to make everyone feel awkward. He thinks it might be better if you reconsider attending." The implication was clear, and it knocked the wind out of me. "Your father wants me to skip my only daughter's wedding because his new girlfriend's ex-husband might feel uncomfortable." "That's not what I said," Amanda replied, frustration evident in her voice. "I want you there, Mum, but not if you're going to make this harder than it needs to be. Either you can accept that Thomas will be there or what?" I asked when she didn't finish her sentence. "Or I guess you give me no other option than to cancel your invitation." The words hung in the air between us, shocking in their finality. My own daughter was threatening to uninvite me from her wedding because I couldn't pretend to be comfortable with a situation that felt specifically designed to hurt me. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "I am serious, Mum. Dad says I need to take a firm stand on this." Of course, Richard was behind this ultimatum. I should have known. In desperation, I reached out to Michael later that day, hoping that my future son-in-law might be able to mediate the situation. Michael had always been kind to me, often bringing me small gifts when he and Amanda visited. But when I explained the situation, his response surprised me. "Mrs. Wilson, I understand this is difficult, But Amanda is really stressed about the wedding planning. I think she just wants everyone to get along without drama. His tone was apologetic but firm. I'm sure Thomas is a good guy if Richard vouches for him. Even Michael, it seemed, had been swayed to Richard's side. I felt increasingly alone in my stance. My next unwelcome communication came directly from Richard himself, who called me the following evening. "Beulah," he said, his voice carrying that condescending tone I had grown to hate during our divorce proceedings. "Amanda is very upset about your reaction to the guest list. You need to stop making this about you and think about our daughter." "That's exactly what I am thinking about," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm thinking about how our daughter is choosing her father's comfort over her mother's on her wedding day. Thomas is my friend now, and he's been good to Amanda. Your issues with Natalie and me shouldn't affect that." "My issues," I nearly shouted. "You left me after 25 years of marriage for your secretary, and now you expect me to smile and make small talk with her ex-husband at our daughter's wedding. This is exactly the kind of overreaction I warned Amanda about." Richard sighed. "Maybe it would be better for everyone if you didn't come." I hung up on him, something I'd never done before, and immediately called my sister Sharon, the only person who had truly stood by me through the divorce. "They can't do this to you," Sharon insisted after I explained the situation. "Amanda will regret it for the rest of her life if you're not at her wedding." "What should I do?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Stand your ground, but keep the door open," she advised. "Tell Amanda you love her too much to miss her wedding, but also too much to pretend this doesn't hurt you deeply." I took Sharon's advice and asked Amanda to meet me for coffee, hoping that a face-to-face conversation might help her see the pain behind my objection. We met at a quiet cafe near her apartment, but the conversation quickly became heated again. "I don't understand why you can't just accept this one thing for me," Amanda said, frustration evident in her voice. "It's my wedding day." "Exactly, it's your wedding day," I replied. "And I'm your mother. Doesn't my comfort matter to you at all?" "Of course it does, but you're being unreasonable about Thomas." We went around in circles until Amanda finally stood up, gathering her purse. "I can't do this anymore, Mum. I've made my decision. If you can't accept it, then you won't be at the wedding." "Let me know what you decide." She left me sitting there, stunned and heartbroken. Later that evening, I received a formal text message. "I guess you give me no other option than to cancel your invitation. I'm sorry it came to this." My own daughter had officially uninvited me from her wedding, and there seemed to be nothing I could do about it. The weeks following Amanda's ultimatum were the darkest of my life. Not even the pain of discovering Richard's affair or finalizing our divorce compared to the agony of being excluded from my only child's wedding day. I spiraled into a depression that worried even my normally stoic sister Sharon. Most days I could barely get out of bed to go to work at the elementary school where I taught 4th grade. My colleagues noticed my red-rimmed eyes and subdued demeanour, but I couldn't bring myself to explain that my daughter had chosen her father's new social circle over me. "You need to talk to someone professional," Sharon insisted after finding me sobbing on the kitchen floor one evening surrounded by old family photos. "This isn't healthy, Beulah." She was right. I found a therapist, Dr. Lynette Garcia, who specialized in family estrangement and grief. In our sessions, I poured out my heartbreak, my anger at Richard, and my feelings of betrayal by Amanda. "What hurts the most," I told Dr. Garcia during our 3rd session, "is that Amanda seems to have no idea how much this is hurting me. She acts like I'm choosing to be difficult when all I'm asking for is basic consideration of my feelings." "It sounds like boundaries are a central issue here," Dr. Garcia observed. "Both your boundary around what you can emotionally tolerate at the wedding and perhaps a boundary issue with Amanda and her father." We spent the next several sessions exploring healthy boundaries and self-respect. Dr. Garcia helped me see that standing up for my emotional well-being wasn't being petty. It was an act of self-care. Sometimes loving yourself means accepting that others may not understand your choices, she explained. The question becomes, can you live with their disapproval more easily than you can live with betraying yourself? As the wedding date approached, my anxiety intensified. Sharon insisted on staying with me the weekend of the ceremony. You shouldn't be alone, she said firmly, arriving at my house with overnight bags and enough comfort food to feed an army. The day of Amanda's wedding, May 15th, dawned bright and clear, the perfect spring day for an outdoor ceremony. I imagined the garden venue we had chosen together decorated with the blush roses and baby's breath Amanda had loved. I pictured her in her beautiful lace dress walking down the aisle without me. Sharon kept me busy with mundane tasks, reorganizing my kitchen cabinets, planting new flowers in the garden beds, anything to keep my hands and mind occupied. But at 4:00 p.m., when I knew the ceremony would be starting, I excused myself and sat alone in my bedroom, clutching the mother of the bride speech I had written months ago. You should be there, I whispered to myself. You should be watching your baby girl get married. That evening, Sharon confiscated my phone after catching me scrolling through social media, looking at the first wedding photos that guests were posting. There was Amanda, radiant in her gown, standing between Richard and Natalie for family photos. There was Thomas laughing with Richard at the reception. Every image felt like a fresh wound. The physical toll of the emotional stress was significant. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and suffered from frequent migraines. But slowly, with Dr. Garcia's help, I began to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage to Richard. I joined a book club at the local library. I signed up for a watercolour painting class I had always wanted to try. Your life doesn't stop because Amanda has made this choice, Dr. Garcia reminded me. You deserve joy and connection with or without her in your life right now. The hardest part was deciding how to move forward with Amanda. Should I reach out? Pretend the wedding exclusion hadn't happened? Wait for her to make the first move? Set your boundary, but leave the door open, Dr. Garcia advised. Let her know that you love her unconditionally, but that reconciliation will require acknowledgement of the hurt caused. I wrote Amanda a letter expressing these sentiments, but never sent it. Something held me back. Perhaps pride, perhaps fear of further rejection. Instead, I resolved to give her space while maintaining my own dignity. It was the most difficult decision I had ever made as a mother, but for the first time in years, it felt like I was choosing myself. 3 months after the wedding, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting any packages or visitors, so I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. What I saw made my heart skip a beat. Amanda was standing on my porch, soaked from the rain, her makeup streaked with what looked like tears. For a moment, I hesitated, my hand on the doorknob, remembering the pain of being excluded from her wedding. Then I opened the door. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking. She looked smaller, somehow vulnerable, in a way I hadn't seen since she was a child, afraid of thunderstorms. "Amanda," I responded, my tone neutral despite the storm of emotions inside me. "What are you doing here? I need to talk to you," she said, shivering slightly. "Please." I stepped aside to let her in, noticing how she hesitated before crossing the threshold, as if unsure of her welcome. I led her to the living room, offering a towel for her wet hair and a cup of hot tea, which she accepted gratefully. We sat in awkward silence for a few moments, the space between us filled with unspoken hurt. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made a terrible mistake, Mum. I should never have kept you from the wedding." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue, afraid that if I spoke, I might say the wrong thing and shatter this fragile moment. "Something happened last weekend," she continued, staring into her tea. "We had a family barbecue at Dad's place. Michael and I were there, and so were Natalie and Thomas." I flinched slightly at the mention of Thomas's name, but kept my composure. Everything was fine at first, normal. Then Dad and Thomas started drinking scotch after dinner. They got into an argument about some business deal. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard your name. My heart raced as Amanda took a shaky breath and continued. Thomas said something like, "You really screwed Beulah over in that divorce, didn't you?" and laughed. Dad told him to shut up, but Thomas was drunk and kept going. He said, "Best asset hiding I've ever seen, partner." I felt a cold shock run through my body. Asset hiding? Amanda nodded, tears forming in her eyes again. I confronted Dad about it later, and he tried to brush it off as Thomas making a bad joke. But when I pushed, Thomas finally told me everything. The truth, as Amanda explained it, was more calculated than I could have imagined. Thomas hadn't just been Natalie's ex-husband. He had been Richard's business partner for years. They had worked together to hide significant assets during our divorce, ensuring that I received far less than my fair share of our marital property. Thomas helped Dad set up offshore accounts and move money through shell companies. Amanda explained, her voice hollow with disbelief. He created fake business losses to reduce the value of Dad's company on paper right before the divorce filing. I sat back stunned by the revelation, yet somehow not surprised. The divorce settlement had always felt unfair, but my attorney had assured me we'd gotten everything that was legally discoverable. "There's more," Amanda continued, looking directly at me now. "Thomas and Dad had a falling out recently over a business deal gone wrong. That's why Thomas got drunk and spilled everything. He wanted to hurt Dad." "And Natalie?" I asked, finding my voice. "Did she know about this?" "According to Thomas, she knew everything from the beginning. She worked in Dad's office, remember? She helped them hide documents." The betrayal was staggering, not just from Richard, whom I'd long ago stopped expecting decency from, but from the legal system that had failed to protect me, and from my own daughter, who had sided with the architects of my financial ruin. "Why did you believe Thomas?" I asked quietly. "Why not think he was just making trouble?" Amanda pulled out her phone, her hands trembling. "Because he sent me proof after I confronted him the next day. Bank statements, emails between him and Dad, even a recording of them discussing how to hide the vacation property in Colorado from you and the courts." She handed me the phone and I scrolled through images of documents that confirmed everything, evidence of a deliberate, calculated scheme to deprive me of what was rightfully mine. "I'm so sorry, Mum," Amanda sobbed, breaking down completely now. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I kept you from my wedding for a man who helped Dad cheat you. I've been so blind." I set the phone down and took a deep breath, processing not just the financial betrayal, but the emotional significance of this moment. My daughter had finally seen the truth about her father, a truth I had never tried to force on her, believing it should be her own journey to discover who Richard really was. "All this time," Amanda continued through her tears, "Dad made it seem like you were the unreasonable one, the bitter ex-wife who couldn't move on, and I believed him. I'm so ashamed." I moved to sit beside her on the couch, and after a moment's hesitation, I put my arm around her shoulders. "We both wanted to believe the best of him," I said softly. "That's not something to be ashamed of." As Amanda leaned into my embrace for the first time in months, I felt the first fragile threads of reconciliation beginning to form between us. The path to rebuilding our relationship wasn't smooth or immediate. The wedding exclusion had created a wound that wouldn't heal overnight, and Amanda's revelation about Richard's financial deception added a complicated layer of legal and emotional issues to navigate. Our first few meetings were awkward, filled with hesitant conversations and moments of uncomfortable silence. We started with short coffee dates at neutral locations, gradually working our way back to the easy intimacy we'd once shared. "I'd like us to try therapy together," I suggested during our third meeting. "I've been seeing someone who's helped me a lot, and I think having a neutral third party might help us work through some of the harder conversations." Amanda agreed readily, and our joint sessions with Dr. Garcia became a safe space to address the pain we'd caused each other. In one particularly emotional session, Amanda fully acknowledged how deeply she had hurt me. "I chose Dad's comfort over yours," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I let him convince me that you were being difficult and petty when you were just trying to protect yourself from more pain. I can never undo that, and I'm so sorry. I forgive you, I told her, and meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean we don't acknowledge the hurt. It means we choose to move forward despite it. Meanwhile, Richard was working overtime to damage control the situation. When he realized Amanda had discovered the truth about the financial deception, he alternated between minimizing his actions, "It's just how business works, everyone does it," and trying to shift blame to Thomas, "He's lying to cause problems between us." Amanda, to her credit, stood firm. "I've seen the evidence, Dad," she told him during a tense phone call that she later recounted to me. "I know exactly what you did to Mum, and I won't pretend it didn't happen." With Amanda's evidence in hand, I consulted a new attorney who specialized in reopening divorce settlements in cases of fraud. The legal process would be lengthy and expensive, but the attorney was confident we had grounds to revisit the financial arrangements. Richard hid substantial assets that should have been considered marital property, the attorney explained. With this evidence, we can petition the court for a more equitable distribution plus potential penalties for the deliberate deception. As the legal proceedings began, I watched Amanda struggle with her new understanding of her father. The idealized image she had maintained of Richard was crumbling, revealing a man capable of calculated deceit, not just toward his ex-wife, but toward his daughter as well. "The hardest part," she confided during one of our walks around Green Lake, "is realizing that he was willing to let me cut you out of my wedding to protect his secret. He knew how much it would hurt both of us, and he did it anyway." "People are complicated," I responded, choosing my words carefully. "Your father loves you in his way, but his self-interest often comes first. That doesn't mean you have to cut him out of your life. It just means you need to understand who he really is and set appropriate boundaries." Those boundaries became Amanda's next challenge. Richard was accustomed to her unquestioning acceptance, and he pushed back hard against her new perspective. He attempted to guilt her, to remind her of all he'd done for her financially, to suggest that she was betraying him by siding with me. "He says I'm being manipulated by you," Amanda told me with a sad smile. "The irony is pretty incredible." "What do you say back?" I asked, curious about her response. "I tell him that I'm 30 years old, not 13. I can see the evidence and make my own judgments. And then I change the subject because arguing with him is pointless." I felt a surge of pride at her strength and maturity. The first holiday after our reconciliation was Thanksgiving. Amanda and Michael invited me to dinner at their new home, a modest but charming bungalow they had purchased shortly after their wedding. As we sat around their dining table, the conversation flowed more easily than I had expected. "I have something to tell you both," Amanda said as we finished our pumpkin pie. "We've decided not to spend Christmas with Dad this year. We're going to Michael's parents instead." "Are you sure?" I asked, knowing how much Richard would resent this change in tradition. Amanda nodded firmly. "It's not about punishing him. It's about me making choices that are healthy for me, not just doing what he expects or demands. Dr. Garcia calls it reclaiming my autonomy." Michael squeezed her hand supportively. "It's been good for both of us, honestly. I never felt comfortable with how Richard treated Beulah even before all this came out, but I didn't know how to say it without causing problems. You don't have to choose sides," I assured them both. "I would never want that for you." "It's not about sides anymore," Amanda replied thoughtfully. "It's about truth and respect. Dad hasn't shown either to you, and now I see he hasn't really shown them to me either. I'm just adjusting my relationship with him to reflect that reality." As our relationship continued to heal, I found myself reflecting often on the concept of pettiness that had been thrown at me so carelessly. Standing up for your self-respect isn't petty. Expecting basic consideration for your feelings isn't petty. And sometimes what looks like pettiness to others is actually self-preservation. The legal case against Richard progressed slowly but steadily. His attempts to block the reopening of the settlement failed when the judge reviewed the evidence Amanda had provided. While the final resolution would take time, My attorney was confident that I would eventually receive a substantial adjustment to the original settlement. It won't undo the years of financial struggle, she warned me, but it should provide security for your retirement at least. I wasn't doing it for the money, though. I was doing it because the truth mattered, because justice mattered, because showing Amanda that women don't have to accept mistreatment, even from family, mattered. On a crisp autumn evening, almost a year after our reconciliation, Amanda and I sat on my back porch, wrapped in blankets, and drinking hot cider as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I'm sorry I missed your wedding," I said, suddenly, the words escaping before I could reconsider them. Amanda turned to me, surprise evident in her expression. "Mum, you have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one who kept you from being there." "Still," I insisted, "I think about it sometimes, about what I might have done differently." Amanda was quiet for a moment before responding. "Michael and I have been talking about renewing our vows for our 5th anniversary. Nothing elaborate, just something small and meaningful. When we do, I want you there beside me, not walking me down the aisle with Dad, but standing up with me as my mother and my friend." I felt tears spring to my eyes as I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat. "Time has a way of revealing truth," I finally managed to say. "The people who truly love us stand by us through the hard times, not just the celebrations. The people who respect us honor our boundaries even when they don't understand them. And sometimes the deepest lessons about family come through the most painful experiences." Amanda reached over to squeeze my hand. "I've learned that from you, Mum. Your strength, your dignity through all of this. That's what real love looks like." As the last light faded from the sky, I thought about the journey we had travelled, from wedding exclusion to reconciliation, from mistrust to understanding, from pain to healing. It hadn't been easy, but sitting there with my daughter's hand in mine, I knew we had found our way back to each other stronger than before. What about you? Have you ever had to stand your ground in a painful family situation? How did you find the balance between maintaining your dignity and keeping the peace? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family healing and personal growth. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't being petty. It's practicing self-love in its most important form. Thank you for listening, and may you find peace in your own family journeys.